Hi, I'm Rachel O'Neill,
And I'm Graciela Bruni.
and we're going to talk about the Acadience Learning Universal Screener.
If we consider the why of Acadience reading, this slide illustrates it well. The slide shows the importance of identifying early students who may need instructional support. The red line shows the average growth trajectory for the lowest performing students in each grade in this school, the bottom 10%. The green line shows the average trajectory for the middle group of students, those students who are in the middle 10% of all students in the grade. As you can see, not only do students on the low trajectory not catch up, the gap between the two groups widens over time. The gap at the end of fifth grade is much greater than the gap at the end of first grade. This is why we want to identify students who need support and provide instructional support early. Again, the earlier we identify students and get them on track, the better. We may need to continue to provide support to keep them on track, but keeping students on track is generally easier than getting them on track when they are way off track.
What is Acadience Reading K-6? Acadience Reading K-6 measures are indicators. The authors initially developed the measures to be used for making decisions for individual students, such as, is the student on track in acquiring essential early literacy and reading skills? Is the student making adequate progress toward important reading outcomes? The measures were designed to be reliable, valid, efficient, and economical indicators of reading health. Much like a thermometer is a reliable, valid, efficient, and economical indicator of physical health. It doesn't tell you everything you need to know about physical health, but it's an excellent initial indicator. The data can also be combined for groups of students and provide a snapshot for us, telling us, for example, what proportion of students score at or above, below, or well below. As in the pie chart, which shows the proportion of students at the end of the year who have scores at or above below the benchmark, this is the kind of change we would like to see. Now, how you display the data is not the important thing. You can use a pie chart or a bar graph or some other display. In the data system for Acadience Learning Online, for example, we use what we call a half donut display. Here's the same data from the pie chart at the beginning of the year, and here is the data at the end of the year.
Taking a look at this table, the right-hand column is the important one. It shows what is important to teach, the essential early literacy and reading skills. You can see the skills listed here: phonemic awareness, alphabetical principle, and basic phonics, advanced phonics and word attack skills, accuracy and fluency, reading connected text, reading comprehension, and vocabulary and oral language. The middle column shows the Acadience reading measure that serves as an indicator of each of the skills, and the column on the left shows the abbreviation for each of the measures. Again, it is the skill that is important. The Acadience reading measures are simply indicators of whether or not students are on track in acquiring the skill and or are making adequate progress on the skill toward benchmarks and important reading outcomes.
This image illustrates the essential early literacy and reading skills and the path from the land of non-reading to the land of reading to learn. There is a large turbulent river between. It is not possible to jump from the land of non-reading to the land of reading, and it is not possible to jump over a step. Each step along the way is critical and equally important to successful reading. Notice that you need a solid foot on both the skills leading to decoding, phonemic awareness, alphabetic principle, and oral reading fluency, and a foot on vocabulary and oral language to get to the land of reading to learn. This is the sequence of skills that Acadience reading measures. While the stepping stones illustrate the sequence of skills, it may convey that each skill is separate and discrete and that you require each one to mastery before you begin the next step. That is not the case. While the skills do develop in a sequence, they are interwoven, with skills becoming more complex and new skills woven in over time. So we have another graphic for you.
This rope graphic, adapted from the original rope graphic of Scarborough in 2001, shows the interrelatedness of skills. The longest strand is the first one to develop. It is listening comprehension and begins basically at birth. Somewhere around 1 year of age, children say their first words and vocabulary and oral language starts to develop. Listening comprehension doesn't stop developing. It continues to develop and is entwined with vocabulary and oral language development. Starting in preschool, children start to develop phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is related to vocabulary development at this age. The more words you know, the easier it is to start thinking about them and categorizing them by phonemic features, such as words that sound the same at the end. Bat, cat, mat, hat, or words that start with the same sound. Boy, box, ball, bat, basket. Children can start to read simple decodable text when they have basic phonics skills and an understanding of the alphabetic principle. So accurate and fluent reading of text comes in next, followed by learning advanced phonics skills. All of the skills we talked about are interwoven and are continuing to develop and becoming more complex, including listening comprehension and vocabulary and oral language. When children can read simple text accurately and fluently at a rate of about 40 words per minute, reading comprehension is woven into the rope. As all of the skills continue to develop, children move from learning to read to reading to learn.
It is important to understand as we move into data interpretation that simply assessing with Acadience reading does not change outcomes for students or schools. Acadience reading K-6 is simply not one part, a crucial part to be sure, but one part of an overall effective school district-wide literacy system.
Here is the outcomes-driven model. The steps in the top half of the model show the ODM steps that occur during benchmark assessment. Benchmark assessment is conducted for all students 3 times a year at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. The steps in the bottom half of the model show the ODM steps that occur during progress monitoring assessment. Progress monitoring assessment is ongoing throughout the year and is conducted for a subset of students who are receiving strategic or intensive instructional support.
There are some elements of Acadience benchmark and how they were developed that are fundamental to understanding and using data effectively. The first thing you need to know is that Acadience benchmarks are research-based target scores. They are criterion reference scores. This means they're predetermined levels of performance against which a student's scores are compared. It is a set level of performance. You could have all students achieve a score above benchmark, or you could conceivably have all students score below the benchmark. This is different from a norm reference score, such as percentile ranks, in which a student's performance is compared to the performance of other students. The Acadience benchmarks are made up of 3 parts: an essential early reading skill, a score, and a point in time. It's important to know what the skill is that the measure is an indicator of. The skill is what you teach. The level of performance, or the score, lets you know if a student's skills in a particular area is at, above, or well below the benchmark. The point in time tells you if the student has achieved the benchmark at the time that predicts getting to the next benchmark. Based on research conducted by authors over decades, we know that for students to be on track to reach future reading outcomes, it's important that they not only achieve benchmarks, but that they do so by a particular point in time.
The Acadience scores are reported out in 4 levels of performance compared to the benchmarks. Benchmarks were set at a level such that students who score at the goal have an 80 to 90% probability of reaching future reading outcomes. These students are likely to make sufficient progress with effective core instruction. While the overall probability of reaching future outcomes for students who achieve the benchmark is 80 to 90%, and above benchmark level, for which the overall probability of achieving subsequent goals and reading outcomes is 90 to 99%. While students who achieve this level are not likely to need additional instructional support to achieve the next benchmark, we do want to be sure we continue to challenge these students. Students who score below the benchmark and above the cut point for risk have 40 to 60% chance of reaching future benchmarks and reading outcomes. These students are likely to need strategic support in addition to effective core instruction to achieve future outcomes. Strategic is a great word for these students. Strategic means carefully designed or planned. We need to carefully plan the supports provided to ensure students beat this prediction. Acadian's benchmarks are set at a level at which students who score well below the benchmark have 10 to 20% chance of reaching future outcomes. These students may require intensive instructional support in addition to effective core instruction to achieve the next benchmark and later reading outcomes.
So now that we talked about the background, we're going to talk about specific assessments and in the grade levels that they're given. This is just a brief summary of which assessments are given at which grade level. Kindergarten has first sound fluency, letter name fluency, phoneme segmenting, and nonsense word. First grade has phoneme segmenting, letter name, nonsense word, and oral reading. Second grade is nonsense word, oral reading fluency. And third through fifth has oral reading fluency, and they're the only grade that has they're the only grades that have the maze. BOY is beginning of the year, MOY is middle of the year, and EOY is end of the year.
Let's take a look at the first one. What is first sound fluency? First sound fluency is a brief, direct measure of a student's fluency in identifying initial sounds and words. The students will be given a list of words one at a time. For example, they'll be given the word cat and they need to identify the initial sound as k.
What is phonemic awareness? Phonemic awareness is the understanding that the words we speak are made up of sounds or phonemes. Children who have phonemic awareness are able to hear, identify, and manipulate phonemes in words. Why phonemic awareness? It's critical to learning to read in an alphabetic system because the letters of the alphabet represent the sounds in the spoken language. It's this ability to hear, identify, and manipulate the phonemes in words that facilitates an understanding of the alphabetic principle and makes it possible to use phonics skills to decode words. Phonemic awareness is a strong predictor of reading, and students who are struggling readers are often lacking this skill. Phonemic awareness is a skill that can be taught. When students are taught and learn phonemic awareness skills, their reading outcomes improve. Students who have mastered phonemic awareness are more likely to be readers. Phonemic awareness is a sub-skill of the broader skill of phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is a broader skill because it includes identifying and manipulating larger units or parts of oral language, such as words, syllables, and onsets and rhymes. Phonemic awareness refers to the specific ability to focus on and manipulate individual sounds, phonemes, in spoken words. Children generally are able to do tasks involving larger parts of language, such as syllables, before they can do tasks involving individual phonemes. So what is phoneme segmentation fluency? This is the next assessment. Phoneme segmentation fluency is a 1-minute indicator of phonemic awareness. Phoneme segmentation fluency assesses a student's fluency in segmenting a spoken word into its component parts. Phoneme segmentation fluency was carefully designed to work as a valid and reliable indicator of phonemic awareness that could be used for both screening and for progress monitoring.
Another assessment is letter naming fluency. Letter naming fluency is a brief, direct measure of a student's fluency naming of letters. Letter naming fluency is a direct measure of a student's fluency in naming letters. The fluency aspect of the measure is important. It turns out that it is fluency in naming letters that is highly predictive of later reading outcomes, not just knowing letter names. Fluency gets at the extent of which children can name the letters easily and accurately. The extent to which children are really solid, strong in their knowledge of letter names. For young children, it is an indicator that they are familiar with the alphabet.
What is the alphabetic principle? Students who understand the alphabetic principle have alphabetic understanding. They have knowledge of letter sound correspondences or basic phonics skills. The more important part, though, is that understanding that those letter sounds are the sounds in spoken words. It is this understanding that is the alphabetic principle is the key to the code. Students who have an understanding of the alphabetic principle and basic phonics skills are able to apply their knowledge of letter sounds to decode unknown words, something that is called phonological recoding. And what is basic phonics? Well, phonics is the system of letter sound relationships that forms the basis of decoding words. Basic phonics skills are essential to learning to read and to being a skilled reader. Students with reading are often missing these skills. Students with trouble with reading are often missing these skills. The alphabetic principle and basic phonics skill, and when they are taught, is important, and students are more likely to become proficient readers. There are two components to being able to apply understanding of the alphabetic principle in reading. The first is phonemic awareness, and in addition to phonemic awareness, students need to know the most common sounds that go with the letters of the alphabet. They also need to understand that the sounds represented by the letters are sounds in spoken words. This is the alphabetic principle. Students who have phonemic awareness, basic phonics skills, and understand the alphabetic principle are able to decode words they have never before seen. This idea of decoding words that they have never before seen is why nonsense words are used.
Another skill that's assessed is nonsense word fluency. Nonsense word fluency is an indicator of the alphabetic principle and basic phonics skills. It measures the student's knowledge of basic letter sound correspondence, as well as the ability to apply the knowledge to decode simple words they've never seen before. Nonsense word fluency was carefully designed so that it would work as a reliable and valid indicator of a student's understanding of the alphabetic principle and basic phonics skills. All the words on NWF are regular vowel consonant or consonant vowel consonant words. For example, the letters Q and X are not used at all. The letters H, W, Y, and R are used only in the initial position in words. The letters C and G are only used in the final position in words so that they are always the hard sound, as in tick and bug. All of the vowel sounds are short ones.
What is Acadian's reading K-6 oral reading fluency? Acadian's oral reading fluency is an indicator of accurate and fluent reading of connected text, advanced phonics and word attack skills, and reading comprehension. There are two components to oral reading fluency: the oral reading of a passage and retelling the passage. What is oral reading fluency? Oral reading fluency is more than accurate reading of words and is not speed reading. It's the ability to read words accurately, effortlessly, and with appropriate phrasing and expression. Reading that is accurate at a reasonable rate and prosodic, read with enough expression that it sounds like language. Oral reading fluency requires proficient phonics and word attack skills, and it's strongly correlated with reading comprehension. Retell is the other part of the oral reading fluency assessment. Retell is the ability to tell what one has read with verbally or in writing. In order to retell, a student must be able to read and understand the passage. In general, retell measures correlate moderately with standardized measures of reading comprehension. So oral reading fluency passages represent narrative and expository text. They meet the readability criteria for grade level as measured by the Acadian's Learning Passage Difficulty Index, and they're field tested and equated for consistent difficulty within the grade level. Reading comprehension, just to reiterate, is the ability to understand what is read, to have thinking guided by print. It's the process through which the reader draws meaning from a text, and the process of simultaneously extracting and constructing meaning through interaction and involvement with written language. Comprehension is important because it's our ultimate goal, reading actively and with purpose and understanding what is read.
Finally, we get to MAISE. MAISE is a 3-minute indicator of reading comprehension. MAISE is used for benchmark assessment from the beginning of 3rd grade through the end of 5th grade. Similar to our oral reading fluency passages, MAISE represents both narrative and expository text passages. MAISE is designed so that approximately every 7th word in the passage, the student is provided a choice of a correct word and 2 distractor words.
As with all of our measures, students are not penalized for imperfect pronunciation due to articulation delays or impairments, dialect, or speaking a first language other than English. All accommodations and modifications outlined in students' IEPs and Section 504 plans will be fully implemented during classroom and standardized assessments. This includes, but is not limited to, extended time, alternate testing environments, assistive technology, breaks, and any other supports that's specified in the student's plan. The integrity of the assessment process will be maintained while ensuring equitable access for all learners. So thank you for your time and attention. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions or concerns.